Hey, what's up guys, it's Oakley, and we're playing Empire Total War. I'm going to be playing as the Ottomans. You can see my forces deployed here, and then in the distance are going to be the American forces of the United States, obviously. Quick shout out, I do want to say I'm very busy with professional work, and so that's why I haven't been able to upload too much recently, so I do apologize for that. Do go ahead and check out the Facebook page that I set up to go over some of the new content that I'm sharing there. It's a lot of historical, military history stuff. Back to the battle, my opponent there you saw has artillery position and then a whole line of United States infantry up through the front with the general's bodyguard in the back, but clearly this is not his entire army. There are a plethora of, shrubs and field places where the American frontiersmen and long riflemen can hide, plus more woods back here. So going into this battle, or at least the very beginning of it here, I'm like, yeah, there's definitely going to be an ambush somewhere. My forces on their side is going to be, I have a couple wings. The main body, though, is going to be 5 of these Nizam-e Jadid rifle infantry, and then 2 Nizam-e Jadid light infantry. Those are the elite rifles. So 5 of the kind of highest tier infantry that I have positioned up here is going to be consisting of my strongest wing. And of course they're guarded by some scouts, and that force is just going to be to push forward. I'm going to have them deploy behind this little bit of a divot in the ground, and then start to prod through the forest. That's where I assume the ambush is going to take place. Knowing that that's the case, I'm going to pull out some of my more hidden forces. So one of them is going to be the Janissary hand mortar units. These guys can fire projectiles that then go ahead and explode, which is a very handy unit for breaking up infantry formations. I'm also pulling forward my general to be in close support. And then I'm bringing forward my Belgic Janissary musketeers. These guys are pretty elite and they do fairly well in melee as well. So I'm kind of responding to the fact that I anticipate an ambush coming up, and I'm pulling forward with 2 of my Sipahi cavalry. These are guys with armor and lances, so I think they're going to be pretty crucial. I had more guys deployed kind of hidden throughout the battlefield, and a big portion is going to be on the right side. So I have 2 Israelis hidden in the woods here, and my right flank is going to be a trap. So I have 2 of these Delhi horsemen in addition, hiding in the shrubs here somehow. I don't know how, but they managed to be hidden. And so these guys are hidden. I have 2 line infantry in the back hidden. And then in addition, I have 2 Nizam-e Jadid rifles also hidden. So all my opponent sees on this right flank is going to be the 2 revealed Israeli infantry units. So that is a very tempting target for him that I want to bait him into. My idea is for him to get drawn into that sort of an attack, and then for me to be able to pounce on it. So what could happen? There would be 2 things. One, my opponent decides, hey, I have no forces here, let me go ahead and attack. Then I can attack with more units that are hidden and balance out the fight. Or I could go ahead and just attack him if he decides not to deploy on the right side. Over here in the woods, the ambush has been sprung. I knew it was coming. I didn't really anticipate it being light dragoons. Usually you don't put cavalry in the forest because they move slowly and their shots get blocked like that. But the bugle is being sounded by my Nizam-e Jadid units, and I'm going to have to pull back immediately. Over here I've deployed stakes preemptively. And then in this position, my Sipahis are going to get a nice charge against the enemy. They do eat a couple shots, but they're going to get right into these light dragoons, doing a lot of damage. So that was pretty awesome. My infantry line is now going to form up into square to see off the enemy. Now, of course, light dragoons can shoot from a distance, but they take a long time to reload, and they make big targets for my infantry, who can just shoot them up. Boom, right there, going to start taking them out. A second unit of light dragoons charges my guys as I was trying to get around the enemy ranks. So that fight is going to be a bit evened out. Although this unit on this side did get in and amongst my Nizam-e Jadid, took out 13 of them, but they lost the entire unit. My square here in support, plus another infantry unit, plus another rifle unit was enough to see those guys off. So my quick thinking and kind of preemptive defense with the stakes and then pulling up the cavalry on this flank definitely helped me counter that ambush. And it's just knowledge that my opponent didn't deploy all of his forces and that presumably something was going to be in these woods. So precaution definitely served me well. Now I'm kind of going to gear up for the next phase of the assault, which is going to be against his main line. I'm going to continue to try and clean up his cavalry in the woods here. Now they're going to be wavering. I've thrown my general in the mix just to topple the enemy units over quicker, because I know I want to seize these woods. They're going to be a key position for me to start to get at the flank of his main body that's out in the open currently. So I'm going to throw in my infantry as well. But I was surprised that these Sipahis did not seem to exchange pretty well. You'll see that a fair amount of them are down to half strength or 3/4 strength, despite being pretty high tier cavalry, so I was not very pleased with their performance, even against light dragoons. Meanwhile, I've encountered more resistance, but at least I know I've cleared most of the forest. The enemy has 1 remaining unit at the forest edge, so now we're going to form up with my Nizam-e Jadid rifles. They're going to try and spot the enemy. I would give the orders to fire, but none of them seem willing to do that, probably because they can't really see them over the hill. I'm not quite sure what's going on with these guys, but at least I'm holding the enemy back, and I'm going to have more forces to push that flank. Meanwhile, on the right side, I've caught his rifles flat-footed. I moved my forces up, got some shots off, and retreated, so absolutely no losses for me. Then I move up with some line infantry to get an additional volley off against his long rifles, so they are taking punishing fire. So I'm just stripping away my opponent's advantages. First was the cavalry, now I'm going after his skirmishers. Meanwhile, on this flank, I'm pushing forward with my cavalry, trying to do a complete envelopment of his infantry line. And I'm going with my Sipahis after the general's bodyguard. He's got 24 men. I have 2 half units of Sipahis. I figure they're strong enough. I mean, I'm starting at 20 men. I get the charge off and I kill 1 of the enemy, but I lose like 4 or 5 men and I'm dropping drastically. So these Sipahis definitely not playing out as well as I would have anticipated. Perhaps because they're tired, but also they just don't seem to be trading cost effectively against the enemy's forces. So I throw in both of them. Meanwhile, in the distance here, my opponent fell for the trap that I laid out. You can see his rifles are coming after my Israelis, and in doing so he exposed himself to a preliminary volley with my Nizam rifles, and then he's getting shots off against my Israelis at extreme range, allowing my Delhi horsemen, who were also hidden, to now close the gap, get shots off, and charge, but without even taking any return fire. So this is a perfectly executed ambush, I have to say. Kudos to myself. So I'm going to charge through and clean up his rifles. In my opponent's haste to try and seize on what was a perceived advantage, he had his infantry units lagging too far behind, and they're just jogging to get in position just as they try and form up. My cavalry are out of there, so a lightning strike destroyed his main line, and now I pull out more of my forces, the Israelis that were hidden, and I'm going to form up into a big line here to beat back, or at least cause his forces on this flank to halt. So yes, you'll notice these are Israelis, which are kind of low to medium tier infantry. They're going to get spanked in a prolonged fight, but they're just here to throw their bodies to hold the enemy at bay, and it is going to work wonders to prevent the enemy from bowling through my flank and allow me to kind of capitalize on the early advantage that I had on this side. So my Nizam rifles are here starting to turn the enemy's flank. I have more rifles, and then my hand mortar company is going to try and move in to bombard these units. But what you'll notice is the cavalry, there was an additional light dragoon unit that came basically to the rescue of the enemy general. He won that engagement, and so now what they're going to be doing is turning about to face my infantry. My opponent's going to charge into melee, hoping to pin my forces. I try and form up into square to beat back the infantry and cavalry assault. And so now my flank is threatened. I retrain my hand mortars on this force, and now you're going to start to see the carnage that they wreck on these cavalry, the explosions getting off, killing large clusters of his forces. One of the good things about fighting in a square is it forces the enemy to kind of surround you and get really compact in doing so, which allows any supporting forces that you have shooting into them kind of to do a lot of damage. So that's what I'm anticipating to do. Meanwhile, my Delhi horsemen charge through into the enemy's kind of the wedge between his two forces, and they're going to be marauding, rampaging through his lines. My line infantry is shooting into his disrupted forces, and now these Delhi horsemen are going to just carve through his ranks of units that are wavering, and I'm going to get a general rout in this sector of the battlefield against what would be otherwise healthy and perhaps even superior units. So I'm not going to let up the pressure. I'm going to continue to punch a hole through his lines and then go right on through and charge at his weakened main line here. The attack in the flank and the continued rout of more and more forces is going to cause a domino effect. Meanwhile, the general was also killed, so this is going to prove very, very beneficial to my engagement against the enemy main line. Still some light dragoons present, but they're going to be trying to get after my men. I'm going to pull them back behind the square, and so my enemy is going to be forced to fight against a square in the woods, so that's going to be to my advantage. I'm going to beat him back in that engagement, I believe. Meanwhile, my Delhi horsemen are going to shy away from that line infantry square and allow my, basically my own light troops to fire into that, and especially my mortar company. That is a juicy, juicy target that they want to shoot in at, explode the tight knot of infantry. Yeah, this is going to be ideal. So there they go, they're going to form up. Meanwhile, my Delhi horsemen have been retrained on the main line. The Israelis are losing, which is why they're in dire need of support. I'm going to charge into the first Delaware, just destroy them. And then meanwhile in the distance, you can see my second Delhi force coming after a U.S. Marine force with 90 men. They're seconds away from firing, and I get the disruption off just in time, preventing them from getting any shots off. They lose 15, 17 men, and now they are wavering. They've lost 23 men without even a volley fired, and now they are routing. So that was an excellently timed rear charge. Meanwhile, you can see the 1st Maryland with 120 men, no losses. They were spanking my Israelis. My Israelis are down to half strength, so I definitely would have lost this engagement, but because of my kind of tactical choice to use just a lot of bodies to hold the enemy in place, it bought me enough time to get my cavalry around the flank and start killing these otherwise more high-tier American forces. So overall, I think the strategy is really coming together, so I was very happy to see that. Very, very fun stuff, and now my Israelis can, you know, focus on just firing. They're not great at firing, but at least when they're not being shot back at, they'll do fairly well. Unfortunately, I did lose my general in the scrum that ensued here, so I do end up paying a price for the slaughter of the American force, but overall things are going very well. I'm cleaning up this force that remains in the woods, massacred the American square. Yeah, my hand mortars just carved through this force. Yeah, made ground beef out of that square. And what we're going to do now is start to reposition our forces, chase off the enemy on this flank, and start to push after the last remaining forces, which is going to be the final gun crew. They're going to be reloading desperately, hoping that canister shot will be their savior. But if I were this gun crew, I probably would have left, which is what happened to the gun crew on the right side. They get one volley off, but just the angle of the hill in front of these forces is not going to allow them to do too much damage. I lose maybe, you know, 10 or so men with the canister shot, but now I can charge in, moving my skirmishers out of the way to allow for a cavalry assault. And so the Delhi horsemen proving their worth this entire battle, running constantly around the fight, firing and charging in with the saber. And so there you go. Now they're going to clean up the last of the Americans. So this was a really fun battle. Thank you for my opponent for playing along. It was very cool to be able to employ these tactics. And yeah, apologies for not being able to churn out that much content. As I said, I've been busy with official work, long hours that I have to continue back at home, so I haven't been able to pursue too much in terms of multiplayer battles, but I do hope you guys will give me a little bit of benefit of the doubt. Anyways, this was a very fun one. Oh, and also be sure to check out the Facebook page where I post additional documentary content that I think you guys will enjoy, as well as other related content and podcasts, so definitely check that out. I'll link it below. This battle was fairly well fought. As you can see, I had the numbers advantage against my opponent. He definitely had the quality. And in terms of those types of engagements, when that happens, you have to pull out a strategic, playbook, which is exactly what I did. So let's sort by kills. Nizam and Jadid getting a lot of kills. Delhi Horsemen getting the second most, both of those. So I think they were way more effective than the Sipahi Cavalry, which are one, more costly. And then two here lost more men than they killed pretty much. So those guys were definitely not worth the investment. And then finally the Israelis, just adding to the body count, did not trade very well, but they were used more in a strategic sense to bait the enemy into assault, hold them at a distance, and then come in and charge to the back with my cavalry. So that is how I recommend using cheap troops, and I think it worked out really well. So anyways, hope you guys enjoyed. See you in the next one. Peace out.